So I'm going to go back to Claire, because one of the stories you told in the book was about the little girl who came to you who was unable to sit up and who developed really, really well using your hippotherapy techniques.
Yeah. So the social farm allowed me, with that opportunity to pilot it here in Northern Ireland for the first time.
In some ways, I feel that we have had great opportunity because we are from a rural background. We have had that community. I do feel that for young people growing up maybe in a very urban environment, that the challenges are much greater.
It's amazing, as I say, that there's so many stories that involve family, and that the influence that our own families have on our careers. Welcome to the Martina Tierney podcast. I'm delighted today to sit here with Clare McMonagle and Anne O'Loughlin. Both of you are currently university lecturers up in Derry here. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with Clare. Just give us a wee brief outline of what your role is in the university at the minute.
So my role in the university is to teach the undergrad occupational therapy students, and I also have a module in postgrad as well. So that would be for allied health professionals. We would have a range of professionals within that. My role in the undergraduate programme is to module coordinate the vocational rehabilitation module as well as the paediatric module. Mm-hmm. I also have responsibility in delivering studies advice for a number of students, and we would deliver a range of extracurricular activities. For example, bringing students to the beach for a day, and we were bringing outside agencies as well then to support the teaching of the students. So it's really enjoyable job so far.
Right. So in a minute, I want to get into more about your role. Vocational is a big part of your role in the university because it ties in with your private work as well.
Yeah.
So I want to get into that in a wee minute, but I want to introduce Anna first. Anna O'Loughlin, tell us a little bit about your role at Ulster University and how long you're there and why you decided that would be a good career move for you.
Well, Claire and I joined at the same time. We had a job share, and we were both coming from clinical practice. I was working in the Northern Trust at the time, and I just felt it was the right time to to have a change. And there was always a feeling of wanting to give something back to the profession. And I was working part-time in the trust, and this gave me a nice opportunity to explore other options. I think as a clinician, I was always a very curious practitioner, always wanting to constantly develop and learn. And I saw the university as an opportunity to do that and to give back to, I suppose I see myself in a very privileged position where, you have a long number of years of clinical practice, and to be able to share that with the students, you're helping the future generation of occupational therapists.
And it's a responsibility too.
It is
isn't
indeed,
it, to put out the best cohort of OTs that you can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I still, I'm an associate with the OT practice, which is an independent practice in the UK. And I think, like Claire, to kind of still have that input into clinical work, as well as the teaching. I know it's a small role, but it's still a very important role because you're still relevant, you're still bringing experience into the classroom, which is, I think, essential to blend in with the academic learning. Mm-hmm.
So you both contributed to the book, The Power of OT, and thank you, your contributions were amazing. So I'm going to go back to Claire because one of the stories you told in the book was about the little girl who came to you who was unable to sit up and who developed really, really well using your hippotherapy techniques. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the actual work that you do and tell us a little bit more about this particular girl.
Yeah.
Ruby, I think her name was.
Yes. So coming up now to 10 years ago, myself and my family set up a community interest company, Gordalee Social Farm, and it was really on the back of a pilot study that we had delivered over the space of a year for people who have mental health conditions or learning disabilities. And it was a really successful pilot, and I could see how much we had as a family to offer. And as that developed, then my heart's always been with horses and the power of horses, and how they can help support our holistic health and well-being. And I was very lucky after I finished my dissertation at undergrad to get the opportunity then to go to America and do the training in hippotherapy. So the social farm allowed me, with that opportunity to pilot it here in Northern Ireland for the first time. And hippotherapy is the Greek word for horse therapy. And what it does is within a treatment session, we use the movement of the horse. So similar to how you might use a therapy ball or a swing, we are providing with the horse up to 2,000 movement inputs per half-hour session. That horse is mimicking that of a human walk. So it's really powerful movement that child is getting. And then, being the therapist then, I would grade that movement so that it's the just right input then for that child. It's, providing that three-dimensional movement as well. So they're getting, proprioceptive input as well as vestibular input. But mainly, as well as that, they are really enjoying the therapy. To the child or young person or family, they're out connecting with nature, with animals, with the environment, with the horse, and they're having fun time on the horse.
And it's very purposeful.
It's really purposeful
occupational therapy
for
is
them.
very purposeful.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what we're all about. Is using a purposeful activity, and it's an activity then that after they spend some time with us in therapy, that they could maybe continue then through therapeutic riding as I still do now, and find very therapeutic.
So tell us about Ruby.
Ruby. So Ruby, we've had so many children that I could talk about, but Ruby's one always sticks out in my mind. I think for all of us as a team, Ruby had a tracheostomy and she has cerebral palsy. She's one of the biggest inspirations that I have met in my life. When she came to us, she wasn't able to, sit up or hold her head up. And her goal was to be able to, engage with activities with her siblings or with others. And actually, what she wanted to do was to be able to attend mainstream school with her sisters. And her mummy was a bit reluctant initially to bring her in the size of this big horse and put her on the horse. And after the first day, I have a picture of it, Ruby was able to sit with minimal support, and it was then that I knew that she had potential. And I always knew every child has potential, and I always look at what they can do and help them support them then to develop that further. So as the weeks progressed, then we would have worked at really developing her core strength and incorporating then other activities into that, so we could continually build on that as well. So initially we would have had 4 staff around the horse, and then we were able to reduce that to 3 staff to support her. And as the weeks went on, we could see her improve, and her head control was improving. And then I decided then to see, if she was able to weight bear. She bought these new horse boots and they were lovely. So she was able to weight bear and to groom the horse, and we spent time doing that. And then we got her then to lead the horse around, and she started lifting her legs and was able to do that as well. And we would have then had physio input then to support us there as well. So Ruby actually was able to attend mainstream school then after that, and I do believe it was the power of working with the horse and that real sense of motivation. But I've seen numerous children have their first words as a result of hippotherapy and first steps. So
and it's the power of your encouragement as well, and giving her the courage to take that first step.
Yes, it is. And I suppose it is important, that therapeutic relationship that we have. I think sometimes naturally as occupational therapists, and you need to build that relationship with the families too, because you have their child who is vulnerable. You're putting them on top of a horse. It's really daunting for them, so they need to trust you with their child. So I suppose it is the power of building that relationship with the child, young person or family as well.
So just talking about family, I'm going to turn to Anna here, because one theme that came through in the book, The Power of OT, every OT that I spoke to, almost without exception, talked about family and their own family and the influence. Like you've talked about it, Claire, about your father, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, about your father. But Anna, you also talked about your family and the influence that they had on you becoming an OT, the experience you had with your aunt, and also your mother. Talk about your mother, because she features very highly in your book on the chapter. Actually, I use her in the introduction of the book. So tell me a little bit about your mum.
Well, I I did grow up in a family where we were involved in a lot of care, for grandparents and particularly my aunt, and I suppose my mum was a nurse, so she had those skills already, and it was following her example and watching how she cared for people, but also, my dad as well. They worked as a great team, particularly in the tragic case of Sarah. Sarah had
This is your aunt?
This is my aunt. She had a brain surgery for a tumour. She was a nurse herself down in Dublin in 1976, and as a result of that surgery, she was left quadriplegic. You can imagine back in the 70s, there wasn't the care facilities, there wasn't the equipment, there wasn't the knowledge and skills really that there is now. And both mum and dad and our wider family really pulled out all the stops to make sure that Sarah had the best care that we could provide. So from a young age, we were nearly learning the skills of a therapist. We were, and in many ways you could say we were using the skills that we would as an occupational therapist. We were helping with feeding, we were helping with range of movement activities, we were looking at cognitive stimulation activities. We would play quizzes with Sarah, we would do reading with her, all from a young age, and then as we got more able, we were able to look at taking Sarah out for social events, and really trying to integrate her as well as we could into everyday life. But
you told me when we interviewed for the book about your brother designing a sort of a gadget for her head control. She didn't have the ability to hold her head up to look at people, watch TV, feed. Tell us a little bit about that your brother designed.
That's another great skill that I suppose Mum embedded into us, is problem solving. She was always looking at, well, why can't we do this, or why can't we do that? And Sarah, unfortunately, over the years, her postural management was such that, she developed quite significant head drop. So she had, she would develop pressure sores or redness under her chin. There would be some skin breakdown. It often would have taken two of us maybe to feed her effectively, one person holding her head up. She couldn't see, her eye gaze was always down on her chest. So we did look at a range of options. We looked at remap, to come up with ideas, because really there was nothing coming from the trust, and she was on a specialised wheelchair. So my brother, coming from an engineering background, he, put his thinking cap on after we had tried so many things, and he came up with a mechanical headpiece, which was able to lift her head up on a time cycle, so maybe up for 1 minute, down for 2 minutes. But unfortunately, this was something that the trust couldn't buy into. We could only use it within a home setting. But for us, the first time we used it at home, Sarah's head was up, and she said, "Is that horse racing I see in the television?" And that was an amazing moment.
Yeah.
And to think of the importance of that to her, the importance of that head elevation for her to communicate better, to see who all was in the room, to be able to feed better, to talk better,
So that was all done, Anna, before you were ever an OT? This was all done?
No, that was...
Is that more recent? You were an
Yeah.
OT at that stage, so you would have had some input into that and knowing the benefit of that and the value of that. Yeah. It's amazing, as I say, that there's so many stories that involve family, and that the influence that the family have, our own families have on our careers. Because you were saying, Claire, that you thought, I read in the book that about, your house was like a Kelly house.
Yeah.
It was all very social.
Yeah.
And that occupational therapy is very much like that. It's about the large, it's not just about the family, it's about the community.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your dad and the farm and how you feel that fits into where you decided to go with your career.
I think our house growing up and still is very much a kiddie house, and the doors are open, and I was always used to people passing by and the kettle was on all the time for tea, and that connection that people have with each other. I suppose my dad's a farmer, and he has a great love for the land and love for animals, and and he's I suppose embedded that within us as well, and he continues to embed it within my children and other grandchildren as well. And I think that's so important, that ability to care for others, whether it be nature or animals. And he would always want to leave things the way he's found them going forward, so he's always thinking about future generations, which is really nice. I think I've always found peace, and I find nature very therapeutic myself, so I want to be able to with patients and people that I work with, provide them with opportunities that's free for them to access, so that whenever they would leave their intervention or their therapeutic setting, that they can continue to enjoy nature in a way that supports their health and well-being as well. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a quote here in the book that I highlighted when I was writing the book out. I'm a real advocate of the natural environment and how it can be used in therapy at no cost to the family. Yeah,
and that's so important. We all the services that we provide through the community interest companies free of charge to the family. So the range of services are supported with a range of different funders, and I think that's really important for me as a therapist and as a mummy as well. I have 4 children, and I want the services we provide to be accessible to everyone. But I'm always aware that when they leave us, how do they continue to support their own health and well-being? So a big part of a new project that we're doing at the minute is providing some advice and strategies and support to people about how they might be able to use what we have here, especially rurally. So, the beach and the forest and, animals, to continue to work towards the goals that they have when they have with us, so that, they don't maybe regress again following that, block of intervention.
And that's something that you are bringing to the university, that you're bringing to your students as well.
Yeah, and it's really important. And I would like, really like for the students to continue to use, the resources what they have around them. I always would remind students of the importance of, connecting with the community organisations that's out there, because it's very important. We normally, would have a limited amount of time to work with a person or with a family. So it's important that, they're connected to the wider community, and also then, with what we have, so there's lots of research around the benefits of nature for your health and well-being. And I suppose maybe it's about reminding some families that I've worked with families that have never really been to the beach. That was a big part of my childhood. When the weather was good, we were all at the beach, or we were out. So
and if you're not near a beach, you can find a green area somewhere.
And that's it. And we were always, doing that. So I think, going back to basics as well is really nice and helpful for people too.
Okay.
Can I just add to that? That in some ways I feel that we have had great opportunity because we are from a rural background. We have had that community. We've been part of a community. We've great sort of relationships there. I do feel that for young people growing up maybe in a very urban environment, that the challenges are much greater, and that we as OTs need to think about innovative and creative ways that we can bring either nature to them or bring them to nature. Because those are the people that are maybe lacking that opportunity that we have, or that our children have to do that.
Because you were saying, Anna, in the book about your daughter, and you do like a gardening project or something. And what did your daughter, your 9-year-old, say? Do you remember what you said?
Yeah, we have a community garden just recently started in the last couple of years, and I've brought her up to that, and she just loves it. And you can see the bounce in her step as she's getting out of the car. Can we do this every week, Mummy? Like this is so fun, and I have a younger son as well who's the same. And what was lovely one day, she got back into the car and she just said to me, Mummy, it's hard to have a frown when you're in the garden.
Isn't that lovely?
And that's really uplifting.
You know, as a student, you know, when I went to university to study OT, and that we did all these activities, we did gardening and woodwork and all, and I just thought, why are we doing these? Like, I just thought, I couldn't see the point of it at the time. You know, I thought I was there to learn about anatomy and physiology and psychology. You know, I didn't understand as the first year, why are we doing all these? Because in first year, you did a lot of those. And it wasn't obviously until I started to look at patients and see the meaning behind the activity that it made it so much real. So the meaningful activity is still something that OTs really should, you know, really take advantage of.
Yeah.
Anna, we were talking earlier and you were saying about, you know, some of the things that your successes have been like very small things, you know, and they were the important things. Tell me a wee bit more what you meant when you said that.
Yeah, I think initially when you started this project and getting in touch with us, one of the questions was, you know, what are your kind of big successes? And I suppose I kind of struggled with that initially, thinking, God, you know, what have I really done? But when I reflected on it, and I have reflected on it since, I was thinking about all of the small successes that I seen, and I worked particularly in acute stroke rehabilitation. You know, so I didn't have maybe access to patients for a long time, but it was the small things that really mattered and the simple things. And you know, I do remember one lady telling me sometime later after she had been discharged that the most valuable time she spent in the hospital was actually with me at the very beginning, you know, where I kind of give her that reassurance, I give her that sense of hope. I kind of coached her through what the journey might look like. And that was really important. Other times, you know, we might take it for granted, you know, the small, simple things in life. But for people who have had a devastating stroke, or they've been, their function has been really affected by, you know, their admission to hospital or whatever, you know, those small wins are huge to them.
And maybe you took that for granted. Maybe you didn't realise the impact you were having at the time.
Yeah, because when I listen to other people, like, for example, Claire's journey, you know, I think, wow, you know, isn't that amazing what she's done with horses and, you know, some of her clients. And sometimes, you know, you feel, oh, God. You know,
have I really had impact?
Have I had an impact, you know? But, you know, when you see a smile coming on somebody's face, when you see small steps of progress, you know, or when you think about, you know, you've made a difference at the very beginning of their journey, which has had an effect right through, is, you know, it's a real privilege to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good message for OTs out there, because, like, that is the reason that the book was written, was to let OTs see that they are valuable, and that sometimes it's the everyday, ordinary little things that means the most to the patient. But then we take it for granted, maybe as OTs, that, you know, we're not having this huge, big impact. But it doesn't have to be huge. It can just be a very small, incremental thing that means a lot to the patient. And you might never hear that. Like, you didn't hear it for years after, I presume years or months after it actually happened. So, yeah.
And also just the role that OTs have in advocating for people is huge. And I have one example of that where, you know, I received a referral one time and it was in rheumatology for a patient. But I mean, her needs weren't that of the rheumatology condition really as such. It was, you know, the complications and the difficulties and the challenges that she had with her environment and her workload. She was a teacher at the time. So being able to, like, I didn't have any special skills, I believed at that time, but it was bringing all the right people to the table, you know, to have the conversations of what we needed to change and do to help her succeed and to maintain her employment.
And it's back to that thing as OTs, no, looking at the whole person. Like, you didn't look at her hands or her joints. You looked at her as the person, the whole person, and what does she need in order to, you know, perform everyday tasks.
And it's, you know, it's having that holistic view and being able to unpick, you know, the challenges and the difficulties that somebody has when they come into you for that 1 hour appointment, you know, and go with what they need rather than what the system or service needs is so important.
So together, what do you, as you started university at the same time, your job, what do you hope, what difference would you like to make for the students, or what is your hopes for the students for the future? What sort of OTs do you want to produce?
I would say to never stop learning. I would say, we're practicing therapists, so, it's important to always keep up to date with new innovations coming out. And, and I suppose, like Anna said, just continually remember that the person, is the most important part, of your intervention. So asking them what they want, what's important to them. So what's important to us as therapists might be very different to what's important to them, so it's important for them to remember that.
A line that you have used a few times, Martina, has really stuck with me, and that's that question, what can I do to help? And, I'm trying to embed all the behaviours of really good rapport building, because I think that's where it starts. The rapport that you develop with a patient, can really transform, the journey of a patient. So it's getting them to really build on those rapport building skills and realising that the person should be at the centre of our practice.
Very good. Well, I think the students are privileged to have you two. It's good to have fresh ideas coming into university as well, and it's great to have you two because, as you already said, you're still practising at a certain level outside of university and you're bringing that skill. So I think their students should be very lucky to have you. So, Claire, you brought this to me today, which is a beautiful book. It's Uncourtly Social Farm.
Yeah.
And there's beautiful drawings on it. Is this a painting?
Yes. So that book, I suppose, that book is bringing together a lot of what I've learnt through the years about the power of horses, nature, and the wider environment. The idea for the book came about when my granny passed away about 1.5 years ago, and we're very lucky that my brother lives in her house now, so we still have the house to go back to, and I do write about that in the book. She was really inspirational to me as well, and we were very close as a family. She was 90 when she passed away, but my brother came across some paintings that Granny had done that we didn't know. I knew she painted, but I didn't know how good she was. So the pictures are embedded throughout this book. And that we run a heritage project funded by the Heritage Fund on the farm. So I incorporated the paintings in through the book, and there's activities there. So I think that book brings it all together for me. So when we did the hippotherapy, I suddenly realised that equine movement is really good for people that maybe have experienced traumas or maybe have some mental health difficulties. And so the activities in that book help support people. They're maybe, stuck in their life or maybe, going through something difficult or challenging. It sort of uses the relationship model to sort of to look at how they can, develop their own goals and go forward. So, again, just my own personal story is included in it, and then some activities using horses, but also birds and the beach and the forest, and so it's.
And what type of groups have you used this with? You were saying.
So we just finished a group of victims who have experienced domestic abuse. And it was really successful to use with that group, and I've had some really powerful feedback from that group. And we were hoping now this year to pilot it with patients who have maybe a functional neurological condition, as well as people who are maybe experiencing perimenopause or menopause, and hoping to develop it further. So that, I think, throughout my last 10 or 12 years has led me to this point, to really, and I think it's a new area of practice for equine assisted therapy as well, and that we are incorporating the movement as well as the natural environment, but also providing them, the patient or the children and families with other activities that they can do as a family at home. So we make bird feeders from toilet roll holders, and hand scrubs from salt and things collected on the beach and stuff. So I think that's really important from my own learning. And then I talk about Granny and daddy and mummy and husbands and everything's in that book.
But like my book. So, no, it's a beautiful book. And I mean, it's very special because it's your granny.
It is.
That did
It's
the
really
paintings.
nice. Aye. So, and that first painting, like, I just thought it was like she was talking to me through that painting. So, like, I had just... My 40th birthday was in August, and I was gifted then by my sisters and brother a horse ride on the beach, a horse ride on the beach. And it was only a couple of weeks after it I came across that picture, and I thought, because I really felt so at ease that day, I couldn't explain it, and I was saying to them, you know, how powerful it was for me. And then I came across that picture, and I thought, I need to develop this into some sort of like a program, you know, to help other people.
So this is quite a new thing.
It
this
is
book.
new. It is new. Yeah, and you know, hopefully I'll continue to develop it as well. But I think signs come to you in different ways, don't they? Sometimes. So
Very good. So
you
that
can get a
book,
copy of that for free. I have loads at home.
and you can anybody
If you
would like
email
it,
me,
you can
yeah.
get it on your website.
Yeah, you can on Gordon Social Farm. You can email me or contact me through the website. Yeah,
And this is free.
yeah.
Very good. So that sort of brought me to another idea there about the role emerging placements. What are you working on? Are you working on anything at the university to get OT students into more sort of new? Like you talked there about perimenopause, you talked about all that. Is there any work in the university to get students into more role emerging placements?
I think it's an area for development. I think it's an area that needs looked at, and I think the course team are certainly looking at this, and we need to kind of reach out to different potential role emerging placements.
Diversify.
Yep.
We have recently had a few students. I was speaking to them on their halfway calls, and like antenatal practices, where they would be supporting new mummies in the first year after the baby has been born, which I thought was really interesting, a new area of practice. I personally love the role emerging placements, and as Anna says, as that continues to evolve and develop, I hope that we'll be able to bring more of these opportunities. So as I will pilot this book again, I would hope that we would have some students come out that are interested in it to be able to support the development of that as well. We had the Foyle Down Syndrome Trust, and they delivered a session for our students. So I think the power of those with lived experience is really important throughout the course, and they're actually in the billboards across Derry, Londonderry. So if you're out and about, you'll see our students with the members from the Foyle Down Syndrome Trust, and the members actually facilitated that session. So I'm a director for the Foyle Down Syndrome Trust, so it was great to provide that opportunity for the members, but also for our students. They had that learning that sometimes is very difficult to teach in a classroom setting. Even those skills that sometimes we take for granted, the students need that opportunity to develop those. So even their communication skills. So the learning then from reflecting on those activities is really important. And the role emerging placements, a lot of our students go foreign and come back with real inspirational stories. But hopefully as we...
I think too, it's important that we link in with what's happened regionally. I think like the mental health strategy in the north is an area that the executive and others are, we really need to focus on that. And I think it's maybe not, it's something that could be developed more in terms of role emerging placements. What can we do to support the services that are out there and improve them, particularly for our younger people? There's a crisis
gap there.
Yeah.
There definitely is.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish off. I'm going to read, if it's okay, the two key takeaways from your the book. And Claire's, the key takeaway from your book was nature can soothe, invigorate and heal a person. You don't always need expensive intervention. Some of the best outcomes can be achieved from the natural environment.
Yeah, I would
Do
agree
you think
with that.
that's your key takeaway from your...
Mm-hmm.
And Anna's key takeaway that I put in for Anna was being a strong role model is the most powerful form of educating. And, I just think that's what you are, because you've got such a great experience, but not only your clinical experience, just your personal attitude and the way, the way you perform and the way you bring yourself. You're just very caring attitudes. I just thought that being a strong role model is the most powerful form of educating. So well done to the two of you.
Thank you.
And good luck with your work at university and all your other work. And thank you for taking part.
Thank you, Martina.
Thank you.